Vidhi Lila Vidhana Kila Krishna Shakti Tavaiva Murti Tulasi Niloke Linde Namaste Charanarvindam Vihina Aparadha Lakshe Shiva Satamadhidaram Vamayitam Sharanam Prapanna Vinde Namaste Charanam Vrindashtakam Jasinuyat Vachitva Vrindavanadesha Padavya
Hello, Hare Krishna, welcome.
How you doing? All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Welcome, welcome. Gadadhar Shiva Sadiko Bhakta-vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadiko Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pariprajakacharya Ashtottara Satashi Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kundigiri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Tham Ki Jai, Navadip Tham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Ki Jai, Gangamai Ki Jai, Jamunamai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Thank you very much for coming. Kendra Prabhu, are you present and accounted for? Okay. I'm not hearing from Kendra, although I see that he's there. Let's see.
We can hear you, Maharaj.
I know you can hear me. Well, let's see. What I'm going to do, because I'm not hearing from Kendra Prabhu, is I'm going to ask you, Panchatattva, if you can co-host the meeting, which basically means especially managing to admit people from the waiting room. There's some weird things about the setup of this conference that I'm not in a position to change. And okay, there it is. He can't get his microphone to seem to work. And I don't, yeah, you're not set up to admit anyone. Okay, I understand that. All right, I've set you up. Pardon me for that. Now I see I wasn't looking at the chat. Strange. This, I don't have privileges to, I don't see a way that I can even make a co-host here. All I can do is put people in waiting rooms and all of that. It's very strange. All right, I will continue to manage it myself, I guess. There are some strange things about this conference, which I'll have to deal with at some other time. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Ti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Ashtacha Deshatarane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, people can now unmute themselves as they ought to be allowed to. They can rename themselves, and the waiting room is no longer there. Okay, we did some good things. Oh, strange though. Well, we've been talking about the Vanaprastha adventure, and interestingly, we've been talking about it not only on this conference, but also as well in our regular Bhagavatam classes, simply because Srila Prabhupada has brought it up in the verses that we're studying. I thought that I would focus today on this idea, often repeated in Srila Prabhupada's purports that one should accept the Vanaprastha ashram at the age of 50. Srila Prabhupada says, quotes, Pancha Shordham Vanam Vrajet, Panchasa Urdvam. After the age of 50, Vanam Vrajet, one should go to the forest, and that means accept the Vanaprastha ashram, where Prabhupada says, in this day, it's easier to go to the Vrindavan forests than go out to the middle of the woods somewhere. So, 50 years of age. In the Manu Samhita, it said, a twice-born snataka, that is a householder, may, taking a firm resolution and keeping his senses controlled, dwell in the forest. When seeing his skin wrinkled and his hair white, he may go to the forest.
All right, here's my notebook.
Okay. Let's see what I can do here. Okay. Let me do one thing again. Yes. Okay. So seeing his hair white and his skin wrinkled, he should go to the forest. And we described that, or we discussed that 50 is a suitable age. Prabhupada said yesterday, or the day before in the verse we were reading, as soon as possible after 50. And we have discussed, or will discuss, that there are different ways, different modes of the Vanaprastha ashram. There's a point here, and I'm a little at a disadvantage because I can't remember what we've discussed here and what we've discussed in the other conference. So forgive me if I'm being repetitive here. In America, well, first of all, Prabhupada says, as long as one is attached to the so-called responsibilities of family burdens, he is always full of cares and anxieties about meeting his family expenses. The 4 orders of social life, as designed in the Varnashram system, are very scientific and cooperative. In student life, one is taught the primary principles of the human form of life. One who enters the householder's life can execute the duties of a family man because he's already been trained for this job in the brahmacharya ashram. And after 50 years of age, the householder retires from family life and prepares for the life of sannyas. Now, if you look at the life expectancy charts issued by the United States government, at birth, the average life expectancy for a man is 76.1 years, and for a woman, 81.1. If you reach the age of 50, then life expectancy is 29.8 years for men, and for women, 33.4. That is to say, men who reach 50 average 79.8 years, and women 83.4, something less than the 100 years discussed usually when we're talking about the 4 orders of life. Now, let me get out of that. And Prabhupada said, it's not that a grahastha should live at home until he dies. Vanaprastha is preliminary to sannyas. In the Krishna consciousness movement, there are many young couples engaged in the Lord's service. Eventually, they are supposed to take Vanaprastha, and after the Vanaprastha stage, the husband may take sannyas in order to preach. The wife may then remain alone and serve the deity, or engage in other activities within the Krishna consciousness movement. So that's Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 24.259. So clearly, these instructions are not just meant for outsiders or meant to be some odd ideal. They're meant for us, for the devotees. Now, give me a moment again. Yes. Okay. Now, it seems to me that, well, I received, or let's discuss what are the obstacles that one might face when we talk about the Vanaprastha ashram or accepting the life of the Vanaprastha. What are the problems? What are the obstacles? I received and by the way, you are allowed to unmute yourself. You all have unmute buttons that will work for you. So feel free to speak up at any point. That's better at this point than putting anything in the chat box, because I don't have a co-host, and managing the managing the chat box is something that would be hard for me at this point. And don't ask me why, it's just, that's the way it is. And let's just see one more thing. Oh, look, now I can do it. Okay. Now Akendra is a co-host and he can monitor the chat box also, if he would be so kind. And you may even find, Akendra, that your microphone will work now. I'm not quite sure. But we're good to go. So it says the host has muted you, Apurva says. Okay, let me unmute everyone. Or something like that. Hold on, please. For some, okay. Okay. All these things that I checked were unchecked somehow. Okay. So now people you should be able to unmute yourself, Apurva Prabhu, and everyone else.
Let's turn the camera on.
Yeah, there you are. Apurva Prabhu, obeisances. Kamalini, obeisances.
Obeisances, and our friend Bhakti Cheryl is here. So shall I go?
Speak up, indeed.
Okay. Now, last week, I'd like to ask a few questions at once. Last week, somebody said, okay, I'm all for it, but where am I going to go? So first of all, where are we going to go? Like, let's say the men, they should go to the forest. So we know that's not exactly practical. And where are they going to go? Are they going to go to an ISKCON temple, and the temple will welcome them with open arms and maintain them? You gave the example of Vrindavan Chandra and his wife, who have devoted themselves full time to serving at a temple. Now, what's going to happen in 10, 15 years when they're too elderly, perhaps, to do too much active service, and when young people don't want to take too much instruction if they're managing or anything? What will happen to them? All right, go to the forest. Now, women? Where do the women go? Ideally, and we see in the Indian community, it's much more prevalent. It's ingrained in their culture that the children take care of the elderly parents. Like when I lived in Lansing, Michigan, there was one family, and they said, we share our parents. We all want them to be with us. So there's 3 children, 4 months with one, 4, and they rotate. Now, of course, here, many of the women don't have children. Not only that, neither are our lifestyles too compatible, even as devotees. Now, like Indians, they're a lot more tolerant. I think, like you see, you travel and visit a lot of Indian families, and they have their elderly parents there. And even though the elderly parents may be much more engaged or desirous of sadhana, still, there's children and all of the things, but they can tolerate it. And so, where are the women supposed to go? I know many devotees that if their parents come to visit them, and especially to visit the grandchildren, they stay at a hotel. Even devotees, like why would they stay at a hotel? So either the parents don't feel comfortable or the children. And then, there's in-laws and all. So I don't think my children would be very happy for me to come and live with them. So that's one thing. Second of all, I was thinking, like, I have great esteem, respect for sannyasis because they've dedicated their life to preaching, and Krishna takes care of them. But many sannyasis I know, they, like you're saying, give up the comforts of household life. They have much more comfortable life than we do, because householders, like you said, the burdens, struggling, what to speak of owning a home and having to maintain it, having to mow the lawn, having to financially. But many sannyasis own their own homes, and then they have servants, rightfully so, because they have served giving transcendental knowledge. So those servants naturally want to serve them. And so many are female servants too, and they do all the house cleaning, all the cooking, everything. Even I know one sannyasi, he likes to cook for himself because he's on a special diet. So his female disciple, she does all the shopping. She washes the vegetables, cuts them all up, delivers them to his door, all ready to go. So as householders, talk about the comforts. Like, we don't have those kind of comforts. You know what I mean? We're like maintaining every day, trying to maintain and all. So I'm wondering logistically, where are we going to go? Where are we going to feel welcomed? And you know what I mean? To make it possible. I was taken away last week when somebody wrote, okay, where am I going to go? Like, go to the forest. We know go and preach. And, traveling the world, we know it's arduous work. Traveling costs a lot of money. Of course, in the renounced order of life, you will get your travel expenses covered, but we won't, and so I'm just asking about logistics. So thank you.
Thank you, Kamalini. These are all great questions. And these are the questions that our modern Vanaprasthas face. How are we going to make it work? How are we going to maintain?
Yeah.
And they're not easy questions and not questions that I have all the answers for. So it's good that you've raised them, and good that we have a conference where others can also chime in and perhaps contribute their thoughts. The first thing is, and I think I mentioned this in an earlier discussion, either in this conference or the other one, that we do need to train our children differently. We on the one side sort of acquiesce to the culture around us. We blend in and mix with the people around us, and our children are brought up like the people around us. And the people around us don't have these values. They don't, by the time a kid is 18 or so, he wants to move out, and that's it. Their parents they have their life and I have my life. And the sense of responsibility that we find in traditional Indian family life is simply not to be found. And in addition, we're not living in villages which are naturally conducive toward maintaining really joint families. We're living in cities where everything is under pressure, where every inch of living space is costly and obtained at a premium. So that also makes life difficult. So my first thought, and again, feel free to tell me I'm unrealistic or that, yeah, that doesn't help or whatever. First thought is that we need to, going forward at least, consider these things in the education of our children. We can't just go with the American standard and say, well, whatever everyone else is doing around you, as long as you chant Hare Krishna, that's fine. Because then we'll have a society that won't work. This Vedic social system depends on training brahmacharis or training young people to be responsible, to value their elders, and to keep these things in mind. So that's the first point. If we, on the one side, it looks good, we train our kids to be nice, successful, to have everything, to be successful just like everyone else in the material world, and be nice devotees. And then when they become more or less like everyone else, at the end, we're the ones who get the short end of the stick, because they also assimilate this set of values that, my parents will take care of themselves. Again, village life is more helpful, because when we have, say, a Gita Nagari or a community situation, it's more conducive to sharing and to providing for an extended family life. This nuclear family, the American style, is really uncivilized. The mama bear, the papa bear, and the baby bears. And then the baby bears move out, and it's the old mama bear and papa bear. That really doesn't serve very well. So the extended family system does serve well, both generationally in terms of taking care of parents and children and so on, and also in we might say horizontally, that is to say, having brothers and their wives and their children and their parents living together helps spread the work around. It helps take some of the pressure off of this relationship between two people, where what's going on with them is the central drama, and there's so much weight and pressure put on that. So extended families, villages, and training young people that from the beginning to keep in mind that, hey, when I leave, you're going to have to take care of your mom. So they know that in advance. That's my first thought. We can't really dispense with that. If we want the social system to work, that's necessary. Now, that doesn't help you or anyone else who's, for whom the world has moved on without those arrangements. So, okay, we have some idea of something that might help us for the future, but what about the present? I agree with you, first of all, that ISKCON temples are not dependable. It's a fact. They have their own needs, they have their own financial worries, and I've seen, at least, that they tend to not want to take the responsibility of unproductive members of any kind. They just don't like to do it, and or can't do it. And so, depending on temples or depending on ISKCON, I would say is a risky proposition. ISKCON is not dependable in that regard, and temples are not dependable. I would have to say that here, right, from what I've seen in Tuaco, we have Vrindavan Chandra with us, and of course he and his wife are both tireless servants of the deity, but there's a real affection for them also among the members of the community. So, for example, during this Tuaco, during this COVID virus outbreak, there's a lot of concern among the community and by the temple leaders to see that they're properly shielded from possible infection, to see that they're taken care of. So the whole temple is sealed off in part to protect them. It's also, standard COVID protections, but even before it was like mandated by the government or anything like that, there was a real feeling among the temple leaders that we have to see that Vrindavan Chandra and Yashomatima are protected. So that's as it should be. That's as it should be. And as it should be for all our members. When devotees serve, whether they're brahmacharis or they're grihastas, when they serve for many, many years, then how much we should value those devotees and feel responsible for them. Now, as you know, you and I know, ISKCON doesn't really have anything to guarantee that or to really build that in a strong way. It's just a nice thought. But at least I do see that is here in Tuaco. I'm happy about that. Ultimately, it's the Grihasta community that will have to take responsibility for these things. That's my assessment. That ISKCON, with its own limitations and concerns and missionary objectives and so on, is unlikely to be able to manage taking care of elder people in a systematic way. There are, and I can easily envision someone saying, well, yes, Mataji, it's true you've served for 35 years, but that was in Vancouver, and where in Montreal, or that was in Dallas, and where in Atlanta, and we just can't add you to our budget. So, and then you have a central fund, and then the central fund has all sorts of bureaucratic difficulties, and I just don't see it as a realistic expectation. I wouldn't want to be at the mercy of the ISKCON bureaucracy. And I don't say that pejoratively because I don't like ISKCON. It's just the nature of institutions. It's the nature of institutions, and especially a young institution that doesn't have a sophisticated arrangement for these things. So that's That's the first thing. So that means it really falls on the grihastas. That is where this weight is supposed to be carried. And it's up to the grihastas to recognize this responsibility and to accept it. Again, that's why I'm particularly averse to charitable efforts that are aimed at freeing the world from hunger and that sort of thing, when we make no effort to see to the welfare of our own members, which to me should be the pressing necessity. Just to look good by feeding the world while we neglect our own people is not, in my eyes, a wise policy, nor is neglect, and charity should be given to the Brahmins, not to the drunkards or to the ordinary people, but to the Brahmins and the Vaishnavas, first of all. When Sanatana Goswami retired, that's who he kept the 50% for, was the Brahmins and the Vaishnavas, not the hungry school children. So that's, those are some thoughts. Now, there's a comment here from Sankarshan, and he says, according to present realities, my general thoughts on Kamalini Mataji's concerns is grihastas can enter Vanaprastha life when or if they are financially set up to do so. Now that's another quite good thought, that in grihastha life, if we're planning, then we can think in this way, that at the age of 50, thereabouts, we're going to be looking toward retirement. Now, what do we do? And I have one friend, Ananda Vrindavan Prabhu in Bombay, who's very smart in finances. And I hope I'm getting him right here because I'm working from memory instead of my notes. And he advises young grihastas that you invest in the following things. Invest in life insurance, invest in home insurance, invest in unemployment insurance, these three things, because you don't want your home taken out from under you. In the event of a health crisis, you want to be covered. And in the event of unemployment, you don't want to be out in the middle of nowhere. So if you have these three things covered, your what would you say? Contingencies. Well, your problems are sort of covered there. And the fourth thing he says is, after that, every month you should put some money away in a contingency fund. And I forget how much he suggested as a percentage, but the next thing is a contingency fund, which covers unforeseen problems, and especially covers such future things as when you want to retire from family life. So then, after you've done that, you've got your insurance, you've got your contingency fund, then you live on the rest. You live on the rest. What this means, among other things, is, in most cases, living very modestly. I know that you do, but we have to think that, not that I just, if I get whatever it is, $3,000 a month, that means I have $3,000 a month to live on. But no, I should put this much away for this much away for this much away for this, and this much away in a contingency fund, so that we're not suddenly looking around and saying, now what? We have no money, we have this, we have no that. So that's another thought that could come into the picture. And if I have it wrong, maybe I'll meet Ananda Vrindavan Prabhu again and he'll set me straight. Another thought, and yeah, another thought is, well, let me see, before I get to the other and the other and the other. The next thing is that even if there aren't, that ideally children should take the responsibility for the mother only. Father should be, we hope, able to move around and travel. And the mother should be staying at home. Although in other circumstances, again, even the children may contribute. That mother and father are staying in Vrindavan, children are contributing. So that's ideal. If the children are not doing that, the grahastas should do that. The temple itself may not accommodate that within the budget, but our ISKCON culture, our ISKCON devotees in the grahasta ashram should start thinking in this way, that we have to, just as, you know, there was a time when no ISKCON devotees would think about giving money to feed the poor. It just wasn't in the picture. It came into the picture at a certain point. It was a strategy devised for making us look good when we were being attacked by the anti-cult movement. And it became such a successful program that it's now taken for granted that this is part of ISKCON's mission. But there was a time when no one gave to feed the poor. It was just not not ISKCON's business. The Red Cross could do that. The Salvation Army could do that. They didn't need us. So my thinking is that the grahastas, who are after all the ones contributing for such things, should realign their charity targets, should realign their thinking, and as they've as they're now directing funds toward these outside charities, they should start thinking about supporting the elderly devotees in their own community. And I deliberately say in their own community because I have little faith in a sort of nationwide or worldwide funding effort where somehow it's up to boards and people who draft long constitutional rules and procedures. I don't have a lot of faith in that. But locally, if the local devotees think that we have to support this devotee and this devotee and this devotee because her husband has died, or her husband is doing bhajan in Vrindavan, or they're both elderly and they're not able to travel, whatever way, if they think that this is our responsibility, then that's a very excellent realignment of the charitable impulses or the feeling of charitable responsibility on the side of grahastas. They should think that it's our duty to give charity, and specifically charity to the Brahmins and the Vaishnavas. Then another thought that I have is that if we have confidence, that then Krishna will help us. Finally, surrender means that somehow or other Krishna will provide. What is that? Yoga kshemam vahamyaham. Krishna says, I'll provide. What is that? Rakshasyatiti vishvaso bhoktritve varanam tata. Let me take one step and another step and another step toward freeing myself from family life and depend on Krishna with the confidence that if I'm serving Krishna, I was just hearing this today, Prabhupada, it was talking about this in the second canto, that Krishna, the devotee can think that Krishna's taking care of all the other living entities and all the other people, why will he not take care of his surrendered devotee? So that sense that let me depend on Krishna. This, after all, is the spirit of Krishna consciousness. Let me depend on Krishna. Let me reduce my needs to the minimum and depend on Krishna. So that may not happen all at once. Not that I just take off to complete independence and whatever. But I have some time in the Vanaprastha ashram. So let me start moving in that direction and see how Krishna reciprocates. Prabhupada, the famous story is there about how Prabhupada told them to build a foundation somewhere, either I think in Mayapur. And devotees were like, how do we do this? And it was all sort of like going on, and Prabhupada would come back and nothing was done for months and months. And finally, they did something. They built a trench, they put some bricks. Prabhupada said, good, now I'll show you what to do next. So we begin on a big scale or a small scale, in a humble way or in a bold way, and then depend on Krishna. That now I'm surrendering to you, so you please tell me what to do next. You please direct me what to do. And Krishna can arrange everything. That Prabhupada told how Haridas Thakur was living in a cave and there was a snake who was a co-resident, but because some other people were visiting Haridas Thakur and were worried about the snake, Haridas Thakur agreed to move elsewhere, but the snake, so as not to inconvenience him, left its hole and went away. So Krishna can dictate even to the tigers or to the snakes to leave his devotees undisturbed, or Krishna can make every arrangement for maintaining his devotees. So finally, we've been talking about this arrangement, that arrangement, this reality, that reality. Finally, we need to have that, or we hope to cultivate that strength of spirit where we feel that Krishna will help me. Let me begin, let me try something, let me take some steps, and Krishna will reciprocate. And yes, let me start doing something, and Krishna will help. Prabhupada said that about Grihastha life also. He said that the devotee married devotee starts some simple means of earning a living, and Krishna helps him. So the same thing when we're looking at the next stage, Krishna, the devotee starts some simple steps for moving toward the retired life, and Krishna helps him. Prabin says, let's see. Praveen says, I've mentioned the affection of the community leaders for the Vanaprasthas staying in the temple who've served the community very long. What about Grihasthas who've not served any particular community for long, or have not served any community but only at home? Seems affection from the community is also required for the Vanaprastha. Yes, we're talking, it's ideal that first of all, that we would have communities, and especially our rural communities, but any communities, and that they would feel that this is our mother, this is our grandmother. We have to take care of, or grandparents, we have to take care of these devotees. But it may not always be that way, and that's a fact. So sometimes that may be available, sometimes not available. Even in communities where devotees haven't served for a long time, ideally the devotees would think that, oh, these are senior devotees, we have to help them. But they may or may not. And I'm sure there are members of this conference who could testify to that it's not a given that the local devotees will think, yes, this is our responsibility. Let us do this. They may or they may not. But again, it's a culture we want to develop, because even if you're the young grahastas who are thinking, well, I don't know if I can take care of these older people, well, you're going to be the older people next. And if the next generation thinks the same way, what will be your situation? So it's intelligent and civilized for the even the young people to be thinking that, well, this is in one sense it's sensible. This is what we have to do if we expect this kind of help for ourselves going forward. Vamsid Hari Gopal has raised his hand. Well, just unmute yourself, Prabhu, and let's hear from you.
Yeah. So Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
So Maharaj, like couple of points based on your today's talk. So first thing is that you said that Grahastha should plan their life, and you quote the example of Anand Vrindavan Prabhu. So I have been following him since last 2 years and all his advice. And based upon that, I feel very confident that at least financially, there won't be any problem to enter into Vanaprastha. So one thing is that if we collect bare minimum, like minimum corpus for which we think that, okay, if I enter into Vanaprastha at the age of 50, I can sustain myself till age 80, 85 without any external help. But I won't be able to do anything else, like doing charity or doing a travel or anything like that. So is that fine, or should I extend my working life to accumulate more so that apart from maintaining myself, I can do other things as well?
During the Grahastha period, you're saying?
Yeah.
The interesting question, because we're supposed to be giving charity, but if we're just sort of putting things aside for our own charity, that's not very charitable toward others. Interesting question. And I don't have a ready answer for that. My first sense is that, as pointed out by the other members of this conference, things are so undeveloped in our community that it may make sense to say, well, I have to adjust with that in mind. And still give some charity, but not very much, because, well, looking forward, I have to plan in this way. Or one may think alternatively, and I don't want to dictate because I'm not in that situation, you know. I'm not in that situation. But one may also think, well, I'll give charity and so on, and I'll depend on Krishna. I'll keep something aside, but it will be less. Depending, again, on one's confidence level and one's own discretion. I'm, again, not being in that situation and not having a lot of experience with people who are and how to manage such things, I wouldn't want to pronounce on that. Did I more or less get on into Vrindavan right? Do you know, as far as what I was saying?
Yes.
For financial planning?
Yes, and in fact, like even before that, like I have been practicing this financial planning since age 26, and I'm 43 now. So I have been following all those principles, and I have in fact created a program, like 8-hour training program for young people, like somebody who is entering into the job at the age of 23, 24. And if they follow all those principles and guidelines, keeping Krishna in the center, then definitely by age of 50, they can retire even after building home, getting education for their children, getting take care of their marriage and all. They can still retire comfortably by the age 50, 52. So that is possible. Like it's not something not possible. Yeah, right. So my only point was, should we extend our Grahastha life or earning life just to accumulate more? Or the moment we see that, okay, now I can live comfortably in my Vanaprastha life, I call it a day and then I retire.
Well, the general indication from Prabhupada's teachings is don't extend it. Don't think that let me go on till 60, 70, accumulate more money. There's no guarantee that I'll live even that long. And why do I want to go on working hard at that age? And even I may be shortening my lifetime working. So better, Prabhupada said, as soon as possible after 50. So again, if our grahastas have been forward thinking about their management, then your testimony is that they will be able to manage. And my testimony is that Krishna will maintain us. As Kamalini has said, it's the sannyasis who are the big recipients of charity these days, to the point where sannyasis own homes and they have large staffs of attendants, and why should you have to put on your shoes? Let me do it for you, Maharaj. All of that. And that, from that point of view, some of the sannyasis would do well to divest themselves of some of their wealth and to see it distributed to other members of the society. That's one consideration. That's spiritually healthy for the sannyasi and might also help us with some of these present concerns. But apart from that, sannyasis who are accustomed to living modestly and living even at risk may have experienced that Krishna will maintain me. Sometimes I may live with a rich disciple. Sometimes I may live out in the middle of nowhere where nobody knows who I am. But Krishna will maintain me. And Sukadeva Goswami in the second canto speaks about that why flatter the rich men? Why should the sannyasis flatter the rich men? There's nature itself is providing the necessities for us. So we need to have that confidence. And in fact, the Vanaprastha life is traditionally arranged in 4 sections with increasing dependence on Krishna. In the first stage, the Vanaprastha lives right near the edge of the village so that the villagers will come and support him. And then he thinks, well, why should I depend on these villagers? And gradually he's becoming less and less dependent. So it's sort of weaned off that dependence as he gradually develops increasing confidence that Krishna will maintain me. But it's not all done in a day.
Mm-hmm. Right.
These are all worthwhile topics, and I think we've not solved any of the great problems of the day, but perhaps we've begun a little bit. And I think unless there are more questions, our time has come to stop. Is there anything else? Any questions or comments for today?
Maharaj, like I have some more follow-up question, but we can take up in next session if time is not there.
Okay, yeah, and I've got your letter. Thank you very much. You've got good.
I'd like to make a quick point.
Yes.
My wife raised this point, and I thought it was a good one. And this is coming from our experience, long time in the Grihastha ashram, and that is that as you go on, and you may think, oh, I'll work a little longer in the Grihastha ashram, and I'll raise money in this way and give it in charity. Almost inevitably, you start to think, well, actually, I need the money for this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And pretty soon your, lofty plans are foiled both in little and large ways. And you realize that maybe you're missing the point.
Yeah. We're sort of, it reaches a place where we perhaps see that there's limits to planning, there's limits to how much we can arrange for our own security. Even those people who are wealthy and have every arrangement for their security can have it all pulled out from under them, just like that in a moment. Or even those who have no arrangement somehow find that it's not very difficult. So there's something beyond. There's a divine, there's Krishna behind everything. And we need to look more toward Krishna, increase our sense of dependency on Krishna. And again, take steps, even if they're small steps, but start taking steps toward freeing ourselves from this kind of, what would you say? Freeing ourselves from dependency on, well, I have to work till I'm 90 because no one will support me. Yes. We won't just rehash these topics in future sessions, although I think we will naturally come back to some of these topics, but we will move on to other things too. So thank all of you for taking part. Any other contributions or questions before we end? Tanishta, did you want to say something?
Yes, Hare Krishna Maharaj. Yes, I was thinking about some devotees have health issues.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, even in their planning, I know devotees that used to live in the temple and they were not, you know, they're not staying in the temple anymore because of that, because of health issues.
Yeah.
And
Big topic. I'm making a note of that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And they are, some of them are in nursing homes and not getting, you know, proper prasadam or anything like that.
Yes, I know instances like that.
It's a very sad situation. These are devotees that have served for many years.
And therefore, again and again, I'm beating this drum that that charity begins at home. Charity, again and again, Prabhupada says, should be given to the Vaishnavas and the Brahmins. In the Bhagavad Gita also, charity in the mode of goodness means to the right person at the right place at the right time, not to the least important members of the society, but to the most important, the head of the society, the Brahmins and the Vaishnavas. That's the first place where charity should be given. So I'm speaking about that again and again, and your point is well taken. I know also of devotees who are just in institutions and there's no proper care being taken. So these things need to be taken very seriously. And I've made a note also of this as one of the things that we need to include in our agenda. Thank you, Tanishta.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Anything else? Anything else? Anything else? Okay. So again, thank you all for taking part. And the 8 o'clock program, it must have begun on the Tuaco channel. So perhaps we'll see you there. Thank you all very much.
Thank you,
Hare
Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Go.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Maji. Hare Krishna. Lakshmana.
No, I didn't. Oh, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Purva Kamalini. Haribo. Thank you so much. I'm just looking for.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna to country, Maji.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Vrindavan Chandra.
Yeah, she's up.
Okay, we'll end the meeting.